1999, I was an undergraduate student enrolled in an Introduction to American History class. The professor, Dr. Shamir, had a reputation for being weird. He didn't give tests, he barely lectured, and he grouped his students into triads, and those triads had to work together, completing several group projects over the course of the semester. He also required that students keep a journal. I wasn't too excited about working in groups and doing group projects, but I was delighted that I would get to keep a journal. Ever since I was a little kid, I'd always enjoyed writing. In fact, I kept a diary since I was 8 years old, and writing just felt natural. So I looked around the class, and I noticed there were about 50 students in my class, and I knew that Dr. Shamir taught several other classes. So I thought, there's no way he's going to read every single journal entry. So with that mental calculation, it gave me the courage to write in my journal uncensored, unfiltered, as if it were for my eyes only. So we were discussing W.E.B. Du Bois' veil and his idea of the double consciousness of Black Americans. And in my journal, I asked myself, is it possible to embrace the dual reality of African and American cultures in one coherent identity? And this question conjured up so many emotions, so many thoughts. And I wrote in my journal. I just wrote until I got it all out, said everything I had to say, completely unfiltered. Didn't think anything of it, turned in my journal. A few weeks later, Dr. Shamir says, Amira, I need to speak with you at the end of class. And I was like, me? You need to talk with me? Why? I'm a good student. What's this about? And I was nervous. Well, after class, I realized he had read my journal, and he had read that poem. And in reading that poem, this uncensored part of me, this hidden part of me, it sparked something in him, and he wanted to have a conversation. So he says, do you do this sort of thing all the time? Are you a poet? And I was just like, I was silent. The butterflies in my stomach turned to piranhas, and they feasted on my insecurities and my self-doubt. And I was quiet. After a long, awkward pause, I said, I write all the time, but I don't usually share. And if I would have known that you were going to read our journals, there's no way I would have wrote that poem in that particular journal. And he didn't say anything. He just looked at me. And then he said, keep writing, start sharing. And just like that, I went from being exposed to being empowered. And I was free to walk away and wallow in being found out or bask in the joy of being heard. And I chose the latter. And this is the beginning of my journey as a spoken word artist. And this same scenario has played out several times in my life. And I've had an opportunity to express myself through poetry on a lot of different stages. In fact, in my signature poem, I say, I feel so hollow inside because it's like no one understands my plight. The words I write, they don't bring life to the emotions that are bottled up inside. If I speak, I'm heard, but when I try to speak, my words escape me and my voice can't bring forth the fruits of my thoughts. But 17 years ago, when I wrote that poem, that's exactly what I was doing, birthing the fruits of my thoughts. So now, I want to be that unusual professor who encourages people to move beyond their comfort zone. And I'm actually a professor now. And when I talk with my students about mirror neurons are these tiny brain cells that speak to each other when you observe someone else doing something. Mirror neurons are the biological proof that we are wired for social connections. To put it another way, there's a famous quote by Marianne Williamson that says, "Our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us." We ask ourselves, who am I to be talented, brilliant, gorgeous, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? In paraphrasing, Marianne Williamson says, as we find our light and we share it with others, we empower others to do the same. And I've seen this when I go to these different poetry venues in California, in Florida, in Georgia. Someone in the audience will say, "Speak, poet, speak." And then the voice of the poet speaks. Your voice is like a second skin that others see, hear, smell, taste, and feel when they interact with you. What does your voice sound like? When I speak, you can subconsciously get a glimpse of thousands of years of evolution. Sometimes my voice is heavy, thick, like the sound of struggle, striving, and progress. Other times, my voice is quiet, mousy, shy, like the sound of fear, fatigue, and fragility. Both are expressions of who I am at that point in time. But as we mature and our sense of self and self-efficacy develops, stabilizes, we develop a consistent voice that others can detect. So what does your voice sound like? I believe that finding your voice is like finding a grain of gold in an ancient river. It's more than screaming or whispering. It's something magical and majestic. Finding your voice is a game changer. And here's the starter kit for finding your voice. 1, keep a journal. I know I'm biased, but writing is an effective way to organize your thoughts. It can be cathartic, and it can even be a process of discovery. 2, sit with yourself. You can meditate or pray or listen to some tunes or just tune out the noise. The point of this step is to slow down and savor the moment. Time is such a precious commodity. And the third step is to figure out what you're interested in and magnify your talents. Follow your bliss. To find your voice, you may have to listen with both inner and outer ears. You have to connect with spirit, with DNA, with your ancestors. The inner ears tell you about the inner world, and the outer ears tell you about the outer world. So listen. Who are you? Why do you think the way you do? Who taught you to love you? Who taught you to hate you? What is a voice but the sound of life? A voice is so powerful because when you share yourself with others, your inner dialogue becomes public record. I have fond memories of my Nana. She was a vibrant woman who would sit on the stoop in New Jersey and talk to everybody as they passed by. She had something to say about just about everything. Tragically, my Nana had congestive heart failure, and she had to undergo a surgical procedure. And there were complications, and her vocal cords were damaged, and she was no longer able to communicate with others the way she had her whole life. But that didn't stop her from speaking. She would clap and whisper, ring a bell, hit the table. She'd do whatever she had to do to still be heard. And even though I can't hear her physical voice anymore, her voice lives on in the legacy of the beautiful life that she lived. Know that your voice and your legacy are linked. So what does your voice sound like? Your voice is a path to power. Thank you.